Microsoft's April 14th update is not some invisible under-the-hood patch. It's a batch of visible tweaks and behind-the-scenes changes that will actually affect how you use your PC every day. If you're someone who cares about performance, security, accessibility, and how smoothly Windows feels, this update is worth paying attention to. Know which 8 changes will impact your setup, how they'll change your daily workflow, and whether you should install it now or hold off for a bit. First, new support for 1000 Hz monitors. The first change that hardcore gamers and motion-sensitive users will care about is support for monitors with up to 1000 Hz refresh rates. In this April update, Microsoft is officially adding support for 1000 Hz panels in the display stack, which means if you have a bleeding-edge gaming monitor or plan to upgrade to one, Windows 11 will now be able to fully recognize and use those ultra-high refresh rates instead of top out at lower limits. For you, that translates into smoother cursor movement, less motion blur in fast-paced games, and better responsiveness when you're doing anything from competitive gaming to dragging windows around the desktop. If you're already on a 240 or 360 Hz display, you may not feel a huge jump. But for people who chase every last frame of smoothness, this is a real-world upgrade rather than a marketing gimmick. Second, Smart App Control gets easier to turn on. Microsoft is making Smart App Control less of a flip-the-switch and may-break-your system feature. Previously, enabling Smart App Control in some scenarios required reinstalling Windows or jumping through hoops, which made a lot of people skip it altogether. In the April 14th update, that workflow is simplified. You can now turn Smart App Control on without having to completely wipe and reinstall your operating system. For you, this means better default protection against malicious apps and unknown installers without the fear of suddenly losing compatibility with your existing software. If you're the kind of user who constantly downloads tools from the web or uses third-party installers, this change makes it safer to keep Windows locked down while still being flexible. Third, Copilot-powered narrator image descriptions. This update pushes forward Microsoft's AI accessibility story by bringing AI-driven image descriptions into Windows Narrator. With this release, Narrator can now use AI on device or through the cloud to describe images on your screen, even on non-AI-enabled hardware. So if you're a visually impaired user or someone who uses Narrator to scan content quickly, you'll start hearing short descriptions of what's in images, screenshots, or icons instead of just being told image and nothing else. For you, that means less guesswork when browsing the web, reading documents with embedded pictures, or using apps that rely heavily on visuals. It's not full on Vision AI everywhere, but it's a meaningful step toward making Windows more inclusive for everyone. Fourth, tweaks to the Settings app UX. Microsoft is doing a round of quiet UX cleanup inside the Settings app, but it's noticeable if you live in Settings as much as most power users do. The April 14th update revamps parts of Home, About, and Account settings so that hardware information like memory and processor is laid out more clearly and easier to read. There's also a performance improvement when loading the Settings homepage, so it no longer feels sluggish when you open it from the Start menu or right-click the Start button. For you, this means less scrolling, fewer confusing labels, and a Settings app that behaves more like a modern control panel. If you regularly tweak performance options, power plans, or your account details, you'll notice that pages feel a bit snappier and the labels are less tech jargon heavy. Fifth, more reliable update downloads and checking. Microsoft is working behind the scenes to make the update checking process itself more stable. The April 14th security update includes reliability improvements when downloading updates from the Advanced Options page in Settings, which is where you manually trigger checks or pause updates. That means you're less likely to hit those checking for updates has failed or update unavailable loops that used to pop up randomly. For you, this change is mostly invisible unless you're the kind of user who manually pulls updates or manages multiple PCs. But when it does kick in, it reduces the frustration of seeing errors when you know an update is actually available. Sixth file, explore accessibility and quality of life fixes. File Explorer is getting a handful of small but impactful tweaks and fixes rather than a full visual overhaul. After installing this update, File Explorer supports using voice typing to rename files, which is handy if you're on a touchscreen device or a laptop without a keyboard for a while. Microsoft is also squashing a white flash bug that used to pop up when you opened a new tab or window with this PC as the default landing page, as well as a flicker when resizing elements in the app. For you, this translates into a smoother File Explorer experience overall. Less eye-catching flashes, less jank when opening new windows, and a bit more freedom to rename files hands-free if you rely on voice input. If you spend a lot of time organizing files and folders, these quality-of-life changes add up. 7. Kernel-level lockdown and legacy driver impact. And this is the one Microsoft doesn't always shout about, is a deeper down security change that could affect older hardware and drivers. Under the hood, this April update introduces stricter kernel-level checks and what some sysadmins are calling a kernel trust lockdown style policy. Older drivers or custom hardware that don't pass the new system test requirements may be blocked or permanently disabled instead of falling back to a legacy mode. For you, the impact depends on how old your PC or peripherals are. If you're running a modern machine with signed, up-to-date drivers, you probably won't notice anything. But if you use older capture cards, niche hardware, or modded drivers, there's a real chance that they stop working after the update, and you may have to seek updated drivers or alternative hardware. 8. Microsoft 365 and admin side changes, April 14th cutoff. And this may not affect you directly unless you're in an organization. Several Microsoft 365 services are also changing on April 14th. So the Microsoft update is not just about Windows. Starting this month, some legacy reporting features like Outlook for Windows usage reports in the Exchange Admin Center are being retired, and admins are nudged toward the Microsoft 365 Admin Center for those metrics. At the same time, Microsoft is nudging organizations toward modern records management powered by Microsoft Purview instead of the older SharePoint-style information management tools. For you as an end user, this mostly means a more stable and cleaner experience inside Outlook, Teams, and SharePoint, while admins handle the back-end side of these changes. But if your company relies on those old reports or legacy records features, you might lose access or see them disappear from your admin interfaces. Now, let's connect the dots and talk about what this means for your specific setup. If you're a casual home user with a relatively new PC, the April 14th update will likely feel very smooth. Settings will be a bit clearer, File Explorer slightly less janky, and your system will be more secure with Smart App Control easier to turn on. You probably won't hit the 1000 Hz support or kernel-level lockdown stuff, so you can install it soon after it lands without worrying too much. If you're a gamer or hardware enthusiast, you'll care more about the 1000 Hz monitor support and the kernel security policies. If you're already on a high refresh display, test that your GPU drivers and custom performance tweaks continue to work after the update. If you're using any modded or experimental drivers, keep an eye on the release notes and consider testing on a secondary machine first. If you're a Windows Power user or accessibility-focused person, you'll benefit from the AI-driven narrator image descriptions and the more readable settings labels. This update is especially worth installing if you rely on screen readers or keyboard-only navigation, because Microsoft is clearly optimizing for that workflow. And if you're in an IT or admin role, the combination of stricter driver signing, kernel-level lockdown prep, and the retirement of older admin reports means you should plan testing ahead of rolling these updates to your users. Should you install it now or wait? Here's a quick rule of thumb you can use when deciding whether to click Update Now or Remind Me Later. If you're on a new or mid-range PC with updated drivers and no niche hardware, go ahead and install the April 14th update. The visible changes are low risk, and the security and stability improvements are worth it. If you're on an older machine or use custom/unofficial drivers, wait a bit, check forums or your hardware vendor's site, and make sure your setup is compatible. If you're in a corporate environment, Coordinate with your IT team and test the update on a few machines first, especially if you depend on legacy admin reports or older SharePoint features. To wrap this up in a way that's easy to remember, Microsoft's April 14th update is not a flashy new Start menu style overhaul. It's a mix of refinements, accessibility tweaks, and security tightening that will quietly change how your PC behaves. You can expect support for 1000 Hz monitors, easier on smart app control, AI-assisted narrator image descriptions, cleaner settings labels, better update checking reliability, subtle file explorer fixes, stricter kernel-level driver checks, and a handful of admin-side Microsoft 365 changes that may ripple down to your apps. If you're still on the fence about installing, the safest bet is to grab a quick backup, test on a non-critical device, and then roll it out to your main machine.